This is Leah with Backyard Homestead in Starkville, Mississippi, and we are out in the garden this afternoon picking squash. Let me zoom in on this guy. And this is our first squash bug of the season to see. And earlier we saw a squash vine borer. So this may be the beginning of the end for the squash crop, but we'll take care of him in a minute. But if they go down, we don't spray anything, so if they do start to go down, it won't be the end of the world. We've already harvested 46 pounds of squash this year, and last year, the whole season, we only harvested 42. And I haven't seen any damage yet on the plants, but we have seen a squash bug now and a squash vine borer. So usually after you start seeing the borers, especially the moth, it's pretty quick after that. But anyway, we're about to get in here and do a squash harvest. And let's see, saw some real pretty ones. There's a nice one in there. There's a really nice one through there. And several pretty ones we've spotted. So we're gonna go through now and pick some squash. All right, the next thing we're going to pick are our bush green beans, and these are provider green beans. And this row is still looking super healthy and doing really well, and I can see several clusters of green beans hanging big and nice and beautiful. So we're going to get in here and pick these. This row right beside this row that's doing so well is not doing nearly as well. It's just never caught up. This front half of the row has never produced as well as the second half down there. You can see where it flushes out and gets bigger and prettier and healthier. So the row right beside it and the end of the row have done great, but this row just never has come on. So, you know, we have very limited space, so we're gonna have to make a judgment call. There's beans on here, but I don't see many blooms, so we're gonna pick them today and just watch it, and we may need to make better use of this space. It may be about time to pull at least half of this row and go ahead and get something else planted. We have 3 more rows of the provider green beans over here, and we are starting to see signs of spider mite damage on these leaves. And this happens sometimes in the garden every year when it gets really, really hot and really, really dry. Like today it is 96 degrees and the heat index, counting in our humidity, is 111 right now. So it's just super, super hot out here. So we're gonna have to make a judgment call on these soon too. There are still beans on here, and there's baby beans, and there are blooms. So we're just kind of watching these. We're gonna go through and pick them today and see how many we get. And if there's a lot of small beans and blooms, we'll continue to let these go. But when we see that we're not making what we should be getting on these, again, with our limited space, we're just gonna have to decide when the time's right to go ahead and let them go and get them out of here and put something else in. But we're gonna go in and pick these are provider bush green beans, and we're gonna pick all 5 rows of these now. We'll come back and show you what we got. Okay, this is what we got off of each row. This side is the row that doesn't look nearly as nice as the row just to the right of it, and this is the pile of beans we got off of it. And then this pile of beans we harvested off this row that's beautiful and lush and green all the way down. And not only is the quantity more, it looks like the quality of the bean is better too. They're just darker green. These are a little yellower, a little just not as nice looking. So again, that's why we kind of keep track of things so we can make good comparisons and make informed decisions about what to do next in the garden. And we've got pots of peppers sitting in our cups on the patio that need somewhere to go. And again, I know I keep saying it, but we have limited space out here, so we have to try to make the best decisions we can to do the most with the space we have. So this end of the row, we might end up pulling this or removing the plants and putting in our peppers here. We'll see. All right, so here's our row comparisons for today. This one we talked about first is off of this row, which is still beautiful, has some blooms, has lots of little beans on it. This smaller pile beside it is from this row where half of it still looks really good, but half of it just never got going good, and we're not real sure why, but it just never did. Then you have this little tiny harvest, and that is off of the 2 rows of the beans that I showed you that were infested with the spider mites. So that's 2 rows compared to all the rest of the stacks are only 1 row. Yeah, and those are the oldest rows we have. And then this is 1 row, but it is the first picking off of that row, and it was really, really healthy and lush, and with lots and lots and lots of young beans that weren't quite big enough to pick yet. So that was a real good harvest from this row in the bottom right corner as we're looking at it. So that row can stay. So the 2 rows of the spider mite infested beans are we're probably going to end up pulling those or removing them, probably try to snap them off the ground to leave the roots intact. But then we're going to either plant peppers or maybe some pink eye purple hull peas or okra, are 3 options, and we're not sure what, but we're going to decide if we're going to pull those if it's time. There were lots of blooms on those rows, so we may watch it a couple days, just see if they do a little bit of a recovery. But this is the comparison for today. And now we're going to put them all back together and go do a weigh-in. Okay, now we're going to get in here and pick our climbing rattlesnake green beans. And we have both of these climbing rows are rattlesnake green beans, this one and this one. But this row is about 1.5 to 2 weeks younger than this row. And I don't think I've seen any beans at all on this row. Just all bloom. Just starting to bloom. But this row's been blooming for about a week, and it's got some pretty nice sized beans on it. Here's a beautiful little cluster right here. And let's see. Here's some real pretty ones right here. I just love these. They're just gorgeous beans. Here's a pretty cluster up here. Alright, so we are going to get in here and pick these climbing rattlesnake green beans. And then I'll come back and show you how much we got. Alright, this is our harvest of the rattlesnake green beans. And that's for very first picking, and this is only 1 row. I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm going to go in and do a weigh-in on these, and we'll come back and tell you how much we got. Okay, this is our patch of silver queen corn, and I haven't mentioned it a whole lot. It got blown down hard 2 separate times this year. I mean, flat on the ground, and it stood back up. And I believe both the times that it got blown down, it was able to stand up before it started tasseling and silking. So I think we should still get a decent harvest, I hope. But it's been through a lot this year. But it stood back up, and we've got some silks starting to turn brown. And I think by this weekend, here's the one that's good and brown. And I think by this weekend we'll have corn to pick fresh and have for a meal. We won't all be ready. It won't be time to start putting it up. But there's several ears that have nice brown silks, and they feel plump. So not going to pick it today, but by this weekend we should have some ears. Several pretty ones. This is, yeah, silver queen corn. And these stalks are almost upright. You can see at the bottom where the curve is. I mean, they were blown down just laying on the ground. You can see through here several of the stalks are leaned over. But they stood themselves right back up. So if your corn gets blown over, leave it alone. Okay, now we're going to pick these thornless blackberries, and this is our trellis that we have in the front yard. And the other day there were just a couple berries in the harvest video we did. I picked just 3 berries, and they were delicious just for snacking, but there weren't a lot ready. But now we have a good many of them hanging now, and still lots and lots of red ones, but a whole lot of pretty black ones. So we're going to get in here and harvest these blackberries. Get a whole lot of them, and they're starting to move out through the yard, so we're probably going to have to get another trellis somewhere or just another designated area to put some of these blackberries, because they're starting to expand, but they're delicious. Hey, and these are our Mammoth jalapeno peppers we've got growing in front of the asparagus bed, and there's a few hanging on this plant. About 3 here that are nice, and 1 on that other one. So I'm going to pick these right now, and they haven't kicked in hard yet, but we're enjoying the few little fresh ones we get. And last thing to pick today, when we were in here picking the squash, I noticed that a couple of the better boys have some pretty bright red ripe tomatoes. So I'm going to go through and pick these. These again are better boys, and I think I saw 3 in here, but I'm going to go through and pick these, and I'll come back and show you what we got of everything after I harvest these. Okay, this is today's garden harvest. This is yellow straightneck squash, and we got 22.13 pounds. And some of these got a little bit big, but I mentioned earlier in the video that I had to work this weekend. So this is what happens to squash if you let it go 2 days without picking. This squash we really need to get out here and pick every single day. But got 22.13 pounds of the yellow straightneck squash. The bush beans, the Provider bush green beans, we got 8.29 pounds. The rattlesnake beans on the very top end, rattlesnakes, we got 1.48. The blackberries, we got 2.21 pounds. The Better Boy tomatoes, we got 2 of those for 0.58 pounds. And our Mammoth jalapenos, we got 0.2 pounds. So pretty nice little harvest. And again, we're just trying to show what you can grow on a very, very small space. We have 3,000 square feet of usable space, and in that we keep our chickens, our garden, our quail coops, and our catfish pond, and that's all the space we have to grow on. So that's why we have to keep rotating out. We keep things, we try to, as soon as one thing quits producing, we try to have something ready to go in immediately. So we're making the most of the little space that we have. And that's about it. Thanks for watching.